All right. Good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? Let me know if you can. Okay. Awesome. Give me 1 minute here. All right. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Intro to Buddhism and Meditation. Um, Good to be with you all. I always like to start out with a little question just to give us a couple minutes for people to settle in. Um, and also just for those of you in the Sangha and the community, just to kind of communicate with each other a little bit. Um, in a bit of an isolation period for a lot of people. So sometimes just a simple comment back and forth to somebody is nice to see and receive and a good expression. Um, so it's spinning on my end. Can you all still hear me okay and see me okay? Just want to make sure this is coming through all right. Okay, great. I appreciate it. So for a question tonight, I know I always like to kind of point out positive things. Um, and give you all, you all an opportunity to point out positive things. Um, something that um, something that made you smile today. Real simple. Um, so if you're new to YouTube or new to joining us, there's a chat box there and on the screen somewhere, and you can go ahead and just type your comments in there. But something that made you smile today, and we'll give a couple minutes just for some people to share whatever they like. And then after that, we'll get started with the meditation practice. But this will give time for our millions of followers to log on. So again, something that made you smile. Two of my best lifelong friends joined today's class. Very nice. Well, Samir, as a few or a few that I'm thinking of specifically, but often I'll get a text or a message or something around 6 o'clock on a Tuesday that says, "Hey, I'm bringing so and so. I'm bringing my mom or somebody like that to temple, so you better bring your A game." So I'll do my best to bring my A game since you probably bribed somebody to jump on class tonight. Healthy debate with an old friend. Those are always fun. Healthy debates. I think it's good that we find situations we can debate and disagree on, and as you say, have it be healthy. My dog, yes, dogs always make you smile. Lush green and beautiful here in Portland. Yes, it is. Hello, Linda and Brian. Son had a successful appendectomy surgery today. Wonderful. That's good news to hear. Always good. Um, oh, mom's in the hospital and she sounded much more lively today. I'm glad she sounded lively today, Marisa. And I hope she's doing okay. Yeah, the what a time for medical professionals, staff, nurses, doctors, everybody, um, to just be able to communicate with us on the outside. Uh, what else? Something that made you smile? I know a lot of people in the Dharma Bum community who are um, hospital workers at various positions, various places, and a lot of my friends as well. And just an incredible time for them to be doing what they're doing, and how much gratitude we all have for them for the work they do. Great to be here tonight. Great to have you here, Carolyn. Um, Boss telling some old stories. All right. Anything else that made you smile today for anyone that just jumped on? And then we'll go ahead and get started. It's great. Helpful resources for COVID. Beautiful. Backcountry drive. Yeah, driving seems to be a good thing for a lot of people to do. Stay in the car and just drive around. All right. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started with the meditation practice. A few things I'll tell you before we begin, especially if you're here for the first time. Nothing's going to happen to you. You won't float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is it working? Is it not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, outside, wherever you are. And this is life. Life is filled with chaos and sounds, and the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of that. So don't expect perfect silence. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, it helps to slide forward, pushing the stomach out a little bit, allowing the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a chair, however you're seated, same thing. You want to keep your back straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. Whatever position you're in, you just want to make sure you're comfortable. I'll suggest closing the eyes if comfortable. Mouth will be open or closed, whatever's comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important with the practice, don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, just settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Knowing throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds. These are not distractions, not disruptions. Simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus. to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Where's your mind? Return attention, focus to the breath. keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Breathing in, follow breath in, breathing out, follow breath out. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe, knowing with each breath There's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day, and recognize the difference, if there is one. And ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs or where we're at. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddhist awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us. He simply learned how to deal with his stress, anger, anxiety, sadness, depression. What he realized is things happen, we react. More things happen, more reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout our days. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun, but it is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do, and learning to be kind to everybody you encounter, regardless of what they say or do. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything outside of us, and we work on changing our mind, our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it's a practice, not an easy one. We're in a time right now where we're being really tested and challenged to probably practice patience, maybe more than you've ever had to in your entire life. We've had to abandon control over many things that we typically want to control. So many people I know are in extremely difficult situations, and yet often there's not much you can do about it. But be patient, focus on what you think, what you say, and what you do. So, with that, I think I'd rather just stop. And as always, especially for those who may be new, I like to really just use the rest of the time tonight to open up to questions, anything about meditation, Buddhist practice, anything on your mind. I'd always rather address what's on your mind and use those questions or comments as opportunities to share some teachings from the Buddha as I understand them. Um, so, as I said earlier, somewhere on your screen, there's a little chat box. You can type in your question and I'll respond and we'll go from there. So, questions, thoughts, comments. Hi, Jeff. Can you talk about the difference between unskillful fear and skillful fear? Thanks, Linda. Yeah, good question. The question came up, and um, nice, simple question, Samir. Does this have anything to do with the person earlier who said they were debating with an old friend? Did you somehow convince them to join this, and now you've loaded me up with the question that you want me to respond to that you debated them about earlier? If not, that's okay. I'll respond anyways. But let's go back to the first one, unskillful fear and skillful fear. So there was a question, I think, on Saturday. Um, Thanks for clarifying, Samir. There was a question on Saturday, I believe it was, about skillful and unskillful, and what do they mean, and things like that. And so, just to sum it up briefly for those who might not be familiar, um, in Buddhist teachings, there's a word upaya. It means skillful means, and so a lot of these teachings are really geared around how skillful or unskillful are we with our thoughts, our words, and our actions. And so I summed up briefly that skillful to me really is it coming from a place of selflessness? Is it coming from a place of benefiting others? Is it coming from a place of kindness and compassion? Um, or unskillful, is it coming from a place of greed, anger, ignorance? Which is, as the Buddha taught, the cause of our suffering. We suffer because of our greed, our anger, and our ignorance. So skillful and unskillful really can be applied to many emotions, or you mentioned the word fear. And I think specifically when we look at fear, um, I don't know that there's skillful fear. And I want to try not to get into too much of Jeff's personal views on this stuff because I try to stay away from that. But when I hear the word fear, uh, really in Buddhist practice, forget skillful, unskillful for a minute. This body of practice is really about going beyond fear and abiding in a place of having no fear whatsoever, to be fearless. So instead of focusing on skillful versus unskillful fear, to me, the practice is cultivating a heart and mind where there is no fear. Now, I want to throw another maybe word or idea out there that it doesn't mean that you become oblivious to what's going on in the world, right? So I like to use the word awareness. One can be aware of all the things that are happening that would potentially cause fear in someone. But an awareness and fear are two completely different things. I don't find any benefit in anything I've learned from Buddhist teachings that say I should live in fear. I should understand, as a practitioner, the causes and conditions that created my life, the causes and conditions that created your life. Every thought, every word, every action created the life you have right now. And when we wake up to the present moment and we embrace the present moments, there's really no place for fear. There's just presence. Even if the present moment sucks. There's an acronym I've heard years ago that I love for fear, which is false evidence appearing real. So the Heart Sutra talks a lot about going beyond fear and departing far from confusions and imaginings. We reach ultimate nirvana. So confusions, imaginings, right? We're confused about things. We imagine things. We're afraid of things. But why can't we just be aware of the possibilities of things that could happen? I could live another 50 years. I could die in 10 minutes. I don't know. But I'm not going to waste any time of my life being afraid. But it doesn't mean I'm going to be foolish and do stupid things. So be aware of potential dangers, right? If I can't swim, for example, I probably shouldn't jump in the ocean. I don't need to be afraid of the ocean. I just need to be aware enough to not put myself in a position where I'm going to end up jumping in the ocean. I can see the beauty in the ocean. I can keep my distance from it. Just don't jump in it. So I think it's much more skillful to look at moving beyond fear than it is to try to break down what is skillful and unskillful fear, because I don't find any fear skillful, at least when I look at what Buddha was teaching. But so hopefully that's helpful, Linda. Um, why is it so infuriating when people of racial and economic privilege can't see their own privilege and implicit biases and understand that maybe drastic actions is needed to create equality? So, I talk a lot about my own personal privilege, um, racial privilege, economic privilege, you name it. Um, as I often say, I am a straight, white, male, able-bodied. Um, I have just about every privilege in the book. And I see lots of people, and I talk about my privilege a lot. In fact, you probably saw just about a week ago speaking at the Interfaith Vigil for the NAACP here in San Diego. and I spoke a lot about my own privilege, my own ignorance, and I'm very well aware of others who don't see it. But if we look at what the Buddha taught to explore causes and conditions and understand that each human has their own karma, their own journey, their own path. And I have a few people I know very well that have very strong racial biases and um, aren't aware of what I would be, perceiving as their privilege. But I'm not going to hate them. I'm not going to get mad at them. Nothing in the Buddhist teaching says that I should hate people who have different views than I do. I should listen to them. I should understand them. I should try to begin to feel why they feel what they do. And only then can I really begin to understand where they're coming from. Um, so again, you being infuriated, that's your fault, not theirs. They are who they are and they are doing what they're doing. And you are choosing to get infuriated. Now, again, doesn't what people are doing is correct or skillful or that it's not harming others. What I'm suggesting is that you watch your own emotions because if you come from places of hate and anger and you respond to the people that you feel are coming from a place of hate and anger, you're really just doing the same thing they're doing, which is acting from a place of hate and anger. So the world's not going to see things through your lens. Every person has their own perception of reality. And as Thich Nhat Hanh says, nirvana, freedom from suffering, is freedom from views. So understand the views that you are attached to and understand the views that others are attached to. All right, other questions? Chuck, hello again. Good to see you. And yes, Samir, I'm not surprised you lose to your 2 and 5-year-old. Other questions, thoughts, meditation, Buddhist practice? There's I share this a lot, but there's Chogyam Trungpa talks about groundlessness. That's what he calls it in Buddhism, or in his teachings of Buddhism. And he says Buddhist practice is like you're in a tall building, and the bad news is you've jumped, and the good news is there's no ground to fall on. So it's just endlessly flowing through life as it is, yet being very aware of the actions you take and how much you can impact in a positive way the world around you. It doesn't mean to float aimlessly or carelessly through life. Other questions? Anyone else here, or who is here for the first time? So, how was your meditation practice? The other thing I'll say about privilege is that, I can say from my own lens that spend a majority of my life completely unaware of it. So, if I see others who are unaware of what I perceive to be their privilege, um, I have to remind myself that I was blind to it for most of my life. So, I think that helps also. Tim, here for the first time. Meditation was nice. Awesome. Welcome, Tim. Good to have you. Oh, good words of wisdom. I try, Katie. I try. First time here. Enjoyed the practice. Wonderful. Nice to have you here, Alexander. Other questions? Meditation, Buddhist practice. Anything you're struggling with? Wasn't the Buddha a prince? How did he deal with privilege? Yeah, I mean, and the Buddha was a prince. You know, the time of the Buddha, um, you're talking 2,500 years ago in India, 500 years before Christ. And you had the caste system. And as, a prince, yes, he had tremendous privilege. Um, and the very brief, kind of crude, um, 2-minute life story of the Buddha is, he was raised totally sheltered by his parents. It was predicted when he was born he would either become the greatest king or, you know, like a wise sage. And so his father wanted him to be a king and really kept him living in a bubble inside the palace, never let him out. And they knew that he had such a kind heart, and if he saw the ways and struggle of the world, that he would not want to stay and rule. So, again, the short story, at 29 years old, he snuck out in the middle of the night and he saw in what they call the four sights. He saw old age, sickness, death, and an ascetic, like a nun or a monk. And this happened over a period of time. But so he said to his buddy Chana, he said, "Hey, Chana, what's with this old age, sickness, and death?" He'd never seen it. Anytime anyone got old, they removed them from the palace. They hid him from sickness. They never allowed him to see death. So imagine growing up for 29 years and not seeing any of these things. So 29, he decides to leave home and realize that how could he live a life of wealth and riches, privilege, when there was a world out there suffering? So now this is a tricky one, and we definitely don't have time, nor do I, eh, to get too far into this. But what I'm about to say, I don't want it to sound as if privilege is a choice and something you can walk away from, because it isn't really, at least in my view of it. But when it comes to the life of the Buddha, he chose to leave the life of a prince, and he roamed the base of the Himalayan mountains. He had all the wealth, all the riches, all the women, everything you could imagine, and he chose to leave it for a life of being a homeless wandering beggar with 7 items, a robe, a bowl, razor to shave his head, a stone to sharpen the blade, etc. So he simply walked out of his life, and after 6 years of roaming the base of the Himalayan mountains, he sat down and figured out the nature of his own mind and why he suffers. And then he spent 35 years, or 45 years, sorry, uh, teaching until he died at 80. So being born with a life of privilege, um, he left it. But when I say he left it, again, you don't leave privilege. Being able to leave that life was a privilege. Um, Being able to choose to leave that life and to become a homeless wandering beggar, in and of itself, he had the privilege to do that. Um, but his life story, I feel, for me, is very inspiring because he took the abilities that he had and he used them to be a benefit to others. And we always say, our college group, our Buddhist fraternity at San Diego State, Delta Beta Tau, our motto is for the benefit of others. And it really comes from what I believe the Buddha was doing, which was living his life to be of benefit for others and helping those um, figure out how to benefit others. So hopefully that addresses some of your questions around, the Buddha as a prince and privilege. Um, it's been tough remaining calm and still when very heavy topics come up and people are angry, upset about what is going on in the world, but important to be a steady post in the ocean, not react. Yeah, definitely. I mean, these are challenging times for so many reasons. Um, you go back a year ago, and don't take this the wrong way, but most of your lives a year ago were a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, as I always say. Our lives are a mess, and we do that to ourselves. So we just went from having a year ago a life that was a mess, anger, stress, anxiety, sadness, depression, whatever you want to call it. And now here we are in a pandemic with all this other stuff going on around us. So to remain calm, the practice of equanimity, as the Buddha taught, is extremely important. And there's a lot of metaphors using the ocean. Steady post is a good one. There's another one that I'm really bad at stories and metaphors, but it's basically, if you think of you have a small little bowl of water, pool of water, and you throw a stone in it, um, it makes a huge impact. But you throw the same stone in a huge ocean, and there's not much of a ripple effect. So the practice is to become as wide and vast as the ocean. So regardless of what happens, you remain steady. Uh, Definitely. Other thoughts, questions? And the other thing about being if you think about just visually, um, you think about being a steady post in the ocean, and I'm picturing those little buoy things floating around. But you know, if you're a steady post in the ocean and someone is lost in the ocean, they can hold on to you. So being the steady post in the ocean isn't just about, and I'm using the metaphor because it's great and everybody else liked it too. I can see, being the steady post in the ocean isn't just for you, because if it's just you, then what's the point? But to me, the bodhisattva practice to free all sentient beings from suffering and to help people suffer less is to be the steady post in the ocean that other people can hold on to because they need you. So you being calm and steady is really the greatest thing you can do for yourself and those around you. Other thoughts, questions? Got a few more minutes before we wrap up, so can I explain what bodhisattvas are? Yes. So the word bodhisattva means enlightened being. So just trying to think what direction to go with this. Enlightened beings are, well, let me explain it this way. I think this would be the simplest way to look at from a Buddhist context. There are predominantly two schools of thought with Buddhist practice. When you look at Mahayana, Theravada, Vajrayana, different schools, Vajrayana being Tibetan Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism being coming from Northeast Asia, China, Japan, Korea, and then Vajrayana or Hinayana coming from Southeast Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia. All right. Um, can you hear me? Anybody? Okay. All right. So I'll wrap up. I'm taking a different direction with the Bodhisattva question. Sorry, my phone. Um, just so the Bodhisattva practice is to live your life to be of benefit to all sentient beings. So the Bodhisattva vow is you vow to be reborn life after life until all beings are free from suffering. To touch on very briefly what I was talking about before, one school of Buddhism says, as an enlightened being, I need to work on awakening myself because if I'm an unenlightened human being, can I help anybody else? The Bodhisattva school of thought says, I'm going to work on my awakening and ending my suffering while I'm also helping others. So the school of Buddhism that I was initially introduced to is the Bodhisattva path and the Bodhisattva practice. My first master, her entire life was based on the Bodhisattva practice. And so the Bodhisattva path, which follows the paramitas of generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom, this is the practice of the Bodhisattva, the six paramitas, which I talk about constantly. And to me is really a simple way: patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom. And bodhisattvas are historically enlightened beings that vowed and continue to vow to live their life for the benefit of others. Um, I would look at someone like the Dalai Lama, someone like a Thich Nhat Hanh. Um, I've heard a lot in Buddhist circles that historians and scholars and those who do um, look at kind of other religious takes, and that Jesus was a bodhisattva. Um, so someone who vows to live their life for the benefit of others. And again, to me, I think that's what this practice is about. And I saw up above right before, I think it got hot or maybe after, the question about, doesn't the buoy move in the water? And I think wise enough to understand when and where, and sometimes it moves too much and sometimes it moves not at all. And you need to be aware of, um, with the cultivation of wisdom, what's the best way to be there for people. So, uh, bodhisattvas, enlightened beings, um, bodhi is enlightened and sattva is being as a literal definition, really. So, um, and you can, spend some time Googling bodhisattva, bodhisattva vows, bodhisattva practice. Um, there's a great, it's the 37 practices of a bodhisattva. It's a great book. I think it was 37. But so With that, hopefully that helps. Sorry that it got too hot and I lost you there for a few minutes, but I will figure that out for Saturday. So we'll go ahead and join palms as we close transfer of merit. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Maurice's mother and to all who are suffering at this time. May they all be at peace and free from suffering. And may we all be at peace and free from suffering. So, just a couple quick thoughts before you all head off. Thank you for being here. Um, my name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 14 years ago to be a bridge to introduce Buddhist practice to local folks. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. So we do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night we have different practices going on. We opened 14 years ago downtown due to the pandemic, and all of our classes just about now are happening online. So whether it's on YouTube or Zoom, our recovery classes every night, our college group, our teen group, Monday through Friday morning meditation. So there's always something going on. Everything we do is free, always has been, always will be. And if I never see you again, think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. That's really the heart of this practice. So thanks for being here. Be safe. Please wear a mask. Be smart and do what you can to not harm others. Have a good night.